Don't you hate semi-trucks? They can't, decide what speed they want to go. Half the time they merge without even checking to see if you're there. And, when two of them get side by side, taking up both lanes while remaining the exact same speed, what the fuck? But do not lie to me. Do not kid yourself. Do not lie to me. I bet you're like me. And you are scared of them because they are giant cubes of metal going 70 miles down the interstate. And, you might start to feel that, knot in your stomach when the bed wavers a little bit too close to the line. Or how about when they're about to take a narrow turn? I swear, narrow turns, especially on these West Virginia mountains, is terrifying when you come, face to face with a semi. And then on the rare occasion when one of them is flying 90 miles per hour and riding your ass. They are annoying and scary. Now imagine if they were sentient creatures. Listen, there's drivers, right? But what if the trucks themselves were sentient creatures?
I hate those fucking trucks.
Hello and welcome back, dear viewers. I'm Starguts, and I am a gigantic fan of the Mad Max franchise. Also, I am recording with a new microphone, so if things sound different or weird or anything like that, well, that's the audio that I have to work for this episode. And I did test it. It was fine. It should be fine now, right? Also, if the camera shakes at all, which I noticed in my Frankenhooker video, it's because my tripod is up on a wobbly table, which my cats are constantly jumping up and down from. And hi, I'm a big fan of semis being used in badass ways within media. Maybe not so much on the road, but in media, big fan of semi-trucks. So when Maximum Overdrive showed up on my recommended feed, and I watched that goofy ass trailer, and I saw that it was gonna leave Prime in 6 days, I knew it had to be the next review. I had to watch this movie. And when I hit play, I usually don't pay attention to names. I don't pay attention to the synopsis much either. I'll watch the little trailer that they have. And if it's just a clip from the movie, then I'll read the synopsis. So when I started this movie, I had no idea that I was about to watch the one and only movie Stephen King has ever directed. I fucking love Stephen King. Whether that's for good or bad, or if it's just a basic take, I don't know what kind of take it is to be a fan of Stephen King anymore. I don't care. I grew up loving his stories because my mom was a big fan. One of the very first non-child books that I ever read was Stephen King. It was The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, but as a 10-year-old, it really didn't hold my interest, and I think my first one ended up being Carrie. I might be lying to you. I think it might have actually been Cell. I think Cell might have been my first Stephen King book. Which is really, I don't know why I've read Cell 4 times. I don't know why I like Cell so much. And here's the thing, I'm not opposed to reading it a 5th time either when I think about it. I'm getting off topic. Momo. Look at this nasty little girl. Maximum Overdrive seems to have a really huge cult following of fans who just adore it. And, okay, my own words of yelling about, how are you not having fun in a film whose entire purpose is to have fun, especially how passionate I was on Willy's Wonderland, well, okay, my own words are about to bite me in the ass because I just have some mixed feelings about Maximum Overdrive. So anyone who has watched my previous videos, the full soapbox, when I was doing that before, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I not just coming on here to talk about movies? Anyway, if you've watched those other videos, you might end up giving me a little bit of grief that, I like films whose entire purpose is to have fun, and I'm about to rag on Maximum Overdrive just a little bit. But like, listen, it's because the fun of Maximum Overdrive didn't last long, man. I'm getting ahead of myself though. So before discussing what I did or didn't like about this film, let's go over a brief synopsis of what takes place. If you're new here, hi, I'm Starguts. If you're new here, the discussion will contain some spoilers, but I try my best from spoiling too much. Basically, I'm not going to be going over every single little detail, but there will be some moments that are brought up in detail to aid in our discussion. If you are interested in watching Maximum Overdrive before watching the rest of this video, I believe you can do so for free on Pluto TV. I'll put a link in the description to make it even easier for you. I'm not sponsored, if you can't tell from my subscriber count, which, hi, all 8 subscribers. That's amazing. Hello, what a celebration. Anyway, that was so awkward. But I'm not sponsored by Pluto TV. In the last video, I wasn't sponsored by Tubi TV. I just like that these platforms are giving you movies for free. You just have to watch ads. Like, I'll do that all day long. Anyway, I'll put that link in the description. Or you can just rent it from Amazon or YouTube for about $4. Maximum Overdrive is a 1986 action horror comedy written and directed by a coked-up Stephen King, and is based on his short story Trucks, which can be found in his collection novel Night Shift. And by the way, I am going to be bringing Trucks into the discussion if you want to read that before watching the rest of this too. I know that it is accessible online if you look for it. Listen, I'm a literary nerd, so I like discussing the literature to film comparison. It's enjoyable. And before you ask about the coked up king, he admitted to being coked up during the production of Maximum Overdrive and has said that he doesn't even remember making it. So, you know, just some food for thought. When the tail of a Rhea M rogue comet, because I totally know what that means, sweeps Earth under its broom, machines gain sentience and begin enacting revenge on their makers, humans. The film follows an entourage of characters stuck within a gas station diner who are being targeted by a gang of living semi-trucks that crave human blood or death, or they just want to kill humans, and for some reason. The why behind a lot of what happens in this movie is kind of just chalked up to this comet, and there's no other reasoning. Much of the film is witnessing how each of these individuals interact with their circumstances, with the main protagonists being Bill and Brett,
Maximum Overdrive,
played by Emilio Estevez and Laura Harrington. But if you ask me, I think that Kurt and Connie, who are played by John Short and Yeardley Smith, steal the show by a long shot.
What are you doing?
You see that gap? The next time it comes around, I'm gonna shoot right through it.
No, you don't! They'll gang up on us and squash us!
I can do it!
As the semis are on their tirade, they start running out of gas, which the humans are threatened into pumping back into them. The film comes to a somewhat awkward conclusion when the humans are able to sneak through a drain away from the truck stop they've been imprisoned within and escape to an island by boat. I have a lot to say, especially after reading the short story and giving the film a second watch. I have a lot to say here. By the way, I mentioned Mad Max. I have not seen Furiosa yet. My dad really wants me to watch Furiosa, and I chose to watch Maximum Overdrive instead, so I'm sorry. And also, by the way, little bit of an on-theme outfit. I don't know, I tried to get something kind of truckery, and I even made this hat that I was gonna wear for the entirety of this. But as you can see, the stencil did not work out. I did dye this green myself, and it's like a beautiful green. But the only thing that stuck to the hat was the adhesive from the letters, and I gave it 3 good tries, and it did not work. My cats have zoomies behind me. They're going up and down from the basement. I gave it 3 good old tries, and it did not work. The closest I got, focus on this, not me. The only part of it that I got is the G. And the G is even like hanging on for dear life. But look, this is what it was supposed to be. I was so excited to wear this hat and I just couldn't get the adhesive to stick. I'm so upset. Oh my god, because listen, is this hat not like a little bit mane coated? Is this a little bit mane coated? I feel like this is a hat that Stephen King might actually wear. Even though this hat is fucked and the only thing that's on it is like just a bunch of glue and then a G. I'm still gonna wear it. I'm still gonna wear it. It's a cute green and like, come on, the hat goes with the fit, man. And speaking of Maine, did you know that Maximum Overdrive does not take place in Maine? What? In the short story, it doesn't specify the location, but in the movie, it takes place in Wilmington, North Carolina. Wow, not Maine. Wow. I think it might be the best to start on a high note and discuss all the things that I did like or appreciate about this film. Why'd I fucking fuck up there, man? First of all, the concept of semi-trucks gaining sentience and just wanting to kill humans, it is really fun. It's campy, it's fun, it's goofy, it's so B-movie also. It is very B-movie. And like I said, I was fucking excited for this movie. When this movie showed up on my recommended, I was so fucking excited. And the trailer does a great job of drawing you in. Well, it drew me in at least, because fucking trucks, explosions, blood. I don't know what else I could ask for. You know, I've been waiting so long for a movie like this, man. I was ready for it to be ridiculous and outrageous and bloody and just cheesy, I don't know. And listen, it does a great job of hooking the audience with those kinds of themes. Especially its introduction when the man himself, Stephen King, has an interaction with an ATM.
Honey, come on over here, sugar buns. This machine just called me an asshole.
Okay, listen, I know nobody ever gets my references, but I have to say this. I think often I reference other forms of media when I'm discussing media because it's just how I think to describe it. You know what I mean? And I don't know how many people are gonna get this when I say it, but I want to say it anyway because it's the truth. With this very first scene, it reminded me of Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, which came out a year after Maximum Overdrive. My cats are on the table, excuse me. And because the movie already had the same tone that Bad Taste did, I was locked in. I was ready for this to be an awesome movie. I thought I would become obsessed. And the first half of the movie does a great job at achieving this tone and what it wants to achieve when it comes to like the dark comedy kind of silly goofy concept of, you know, machines are alive and killing humans. It especially does this in the way that just like the most random things occur. So like, let's talk about the steamroller. Because let's talk about the steamroller and how it just comes out of nowhere. Why? Where? What? There's just a steamroller. And the steamroller is one of my top favorite scenes in any movie now. The steamroller shows up specifically just to run over a child. I'm not gonna show it. I don't think I can show it. But it's a good scene. It's so just out there. You know, that's what I mean. This movie starts so strong. It's so out there with what it's doing. When it, like, I would say the first 30 to 40 minutes, it's like this. And also when we're talking about the comedy aspect, I just think, I don't know, maybe it's not important to know, but it's important for me to know, obviously, because I wrote it in the script, of how good of a knack King has for writing dialogue.
Here I go and give you a ride my brand new car, and look at the garbage coming out of your mouth. And you know what I think?
I'm not sure how many people really realize this, but writing dialogue is difficult, okay? It's really easy for a writer to fuck up dialogue, especially when it's an exchange between two or more people. And if you think that your dialogue is fine and that you're great at it, I guarantee that you are lying to yourself. Everyone struggles with dialogue. I struggle with dialogue. Sometimes I can make it come out half decent, but nothing will fucking break you down until you were in a creative writing class and this fucking topic is dialogue. Let's start working on our dialogue. I never got knocked for it too hard, but like, people don't get that writing good dialogue is difficult. It is. And it just seems to come so naturally to King in all of his writing. Especially when the character is a little bit of an asshole. He is just so natural at being able to write convincing, realistic dialogue. So, Maximum Overdrive still has great dialogue, as does all of his, books. So while the narrative does eventually drop its comedic nature, which we'll be getting into, it does at least satisfy that weird big truck goes smash, boom, fire, explosion, roar, rock and roll, that thing that plagues some of our minds, mine included. I love big cargo smash boom. There were so many badass instances of the semis and humans fighting and attacking each other with explosions and fire, and man, it felt like being on the Fury Road. So, I'm not gonna lie, it did serve its promise of supplying us with plenty of action and explosions and, what the people came to see from the trailer. It did supply plenty of that. I also thought I was going crazy over the main, I don't know what you, antagonist truck, the Green Goblin. I thought there was no way that this is the Green Goblin, but it had the color scheme, it had the widow's peak, it had the ears, it had the eyes. It was Green Goblin. Is it really Green Goblin in this movie? Turns out yes, because the sources that I looked at that discuss this movie, because I like to do a little bit of research before I, write this, the sources do refer to it as the Green Goblin truck. Which, by the way, if you're interested, is now owned by Tim Shockey, or it should still be. He goes to conventions with it every now and then in the US and Canada. I think he's from Ohio. So you might get lucky one day and you can see it in person. He does a little tour, or at least a few years ago he was still doing tours. I don't know if that's something that stopped now. I didn't do that much research, okay? But it did give me a moment to sit back and remember how Marvel in the 80s was not the same Marvel that exists now. And especially like the way fictional characters and copyright was in the 80s. Companies were putting their characters in and on everything, I think. So take a step back. Of course it's the Green Goblin. Why would you anyway? I just thought it was cool. I just thought it was cool and funny that it is indeed the Spider-Man Green Goblin. Incredible. So as I mentioned in the synopsis, I think the only characters that I give a shit about are Kurt and Connie. At first they were just, man, dude, they were so ridiculous. They were just the stereotype of a white person in a horror movie. You know what I mean? Just white idiots. Why are we checking the bloody arm? Why is your immediate reaction to go check the bloody arm? And then when he almost dies,
Hey! Hey! I need some help!
and he just like scruffs it off like, oh, wow, that was a close one, honey. Let us very slowly like shake our heads and go towards each other for a hug. And then the truck revs up again and Connie starts screaming. Anyway, but if you can't tell, the more I was exposed to them, the more that I just fell in love with them. They are the only characters that matter to me in this movie. And Connie especially. Maybe it's because I feel like I resonate with Connie.
Oh shit, I'm sick of this shit. You goddamn asshole. Curtis, will you help me?
I think Connie is how I would react in this situation. However, all good things must come to an end, and those were the only positives that I really had to say about this film. At this point, I feel like maybe I might start to jump around in my topics a little bit, but that's because they are all very much related to one another to make one giant point, kind of. So a lot of my complaints do have to do with the narrative structure of the film, and I know what you're thinking. Starguts, when you talked about Willy's Wonderland, you said you didn't care if a fun movie had like a cohesive plot as long as it was fun, right? Okay, yes, I did say that, and it is very true. It is true. I agree with that. But if that humor and playful nature is continued throughout the film, you see, for some reason, halfway through Maximum Overdrive, it starts taking itself seriously. Or at least that's the vibe that I got from it. It started to take itself seriously as a narrative, and like too seriously. It almost entirely uses all the humor that it had began with. That paired with the fact that it slows down a lot, it completely loses its energy. Especially as soon as that humor's gone, it loses its energy. The first time I watched this, I was under the influence, and I did worry that maybe I was getting tired at that point, like later on in the film, because I was under the influence. So when I watched it a second time, I stayed sober, and no, I still felt that way, if not worse. And here's the thing, most movies are guilty of like having a lull or having it be slow in the middle. You know what I mean? Every movie is guilty of that. It's just that Maximum Overdrive, it lost its energy and it never picked it back up. Like, even when the film was reaching its resolution, that ending just wasn't very exciting. At least for me, you know? It didn't feel as exciting as it did in the beginning. And I want to include that there might actually be an interesting reason for this change in tone between the first half of the movie versus the second half of the movie. So it turns out George A. Romero was on the set a lot during Maximum Overdrive's production, and apparently King got directorial advice from him throughout the production. However, there's a rumor, some people believe, I don't know if I believe, well, I don't know. I don't know what was going on in that time, man. But there's a rumor that Romero started directing Maximum Overdrive for King while he was seeking help with his overindulgence of Coca-Cola. But it's just a rumor. It's not confirmed anywhere. It's just what people suspect. And if that is the truth, that could probably explain why there's such a tonal difference between the first half of the movie, where it's way more comedic, and the second half that starts to take itself seriously, I feel, anyway. And with the decline of this energy also comes the issue that the movie doesn't have a clear idea of where it's going. It feels like it's constantly and aimlessly seeking direction. Momo. But I do kind of think that it's an understandable struggle to be dealing with this narrative, because it is based on the short story Trucks that Stephen King wrote, and Trucks has a drastically different tone and conclusion. Some people are gonna get up in arms. I feel as though Maximum Overdrive was destined to fail or waver narratively because of this tonal difference between the story and what the film wanted to achieve. I will say, as a longtime reader of King, I wasn't super crazy about Trucks as, you know, a story of his. I think he's written better stuff. It just, you know, it wasn't the best thing that I read by him. But I do prefer the story Trucks over the movie Overdrive. Let me first explain what I mean when I said that this film was kind of destined to fail. I don't mean failure as in at the box office or amongst audiences, although it was a box office flop. Rather, a failure to convey the message and themes that the source material was trying to convey. When it comes to that, like, Trucks and Maximum Overdrive are two completely different stories that just so happen to have shared moments or scenes. So for starters, Trucks is a much more dreadful, real, and morbid depiction of humanity within the same scenario as Maximum Overdrive. Not only does it showcase survival of the fittest, but it has a larger emphasis that humanity is being enslaved, and they're under the impression that it's for forever. Like, hi, hello, because the comet in the story does not exist. There is no explanation for why it happens. Deal with it. So the short story is them just dealing with it, dealing with this new life, and for all they know, normal life will never return, you know? There's no explanation behind it. It just suddenly happened, and now they just kind of gotta deal with it. I think the most haunting part of the story, for me at least, was the decision not to rescue the salesman. So, in Trucks, the narrator and Jerry, their movie relations, the narrator kind of shares perspectives between Bill and Kurt in the movie, and Jerry is pretty much just Kurt, just to like give these characters a reference of who they are in the movie. The narrator and Jerry find it necessary to leave the diner, not to rescue someone that was a part of their group, but instead to collect water for the group. They left the diner for the necessity of life. I really liked that the issue of food and water was taken into consideration within the short story, because, I mean, yeah, that's a realistic problem that would occur in this scenario, and it's very easy to further make some conflict for the heroes to resolve later on, you know? Even if it's a comedy, like, there you can still include that as one of the conflicts for the heroes to resolve. And it's, you know, a reasonable one. Of course they need to fucking figure out how to get food and water, or even how to, like, make the food and water last for so long, because that's an issue too. Like, if all the electricity goes out, the meat goes bad sooner, right? But while they don't leave the diner to rescue anyone, the salesman, being alive in a ditch, still makes an appearance. Oh yes, and it shows the morbid and real response that a person would probably have. So you see in Maximum Overdrive, Bill and Kurt find it necessary to risk their lives rescuing the salesman, which nobody even liked in the first place.
Holy shit. What was that?
Oh, God. That's that Bible salesman I rode in with.
What are you doing?
I'll be right back.
You ain't going.
There's a man laying hurt out there, honey.
There's gonna be a man laying hurt in here if you don't quit this foolishness.
If it was your man out there, you'd want someone to go, wouldn't you?
Well, it ain't. You're not.
Okay, hold on. Why is she?
What are you doing?
Why is
right
Brett
back.
saying
You ain't
anything?
going.
She should be the one
There's
person
gonna be a man
that
laying hurt in here if you
doesn't
don't quit
want
this
him to be
foolishness.
rescued.
If it was your man out there, you'd want someone to go, wouldn't you?
Well,
Why are
it
you
ain't.
saying
You're
anything?
not
But in Trucks, when the salesman is calling for help, nobody comes. Now, at first, the girl, who doesn't receive a name in the story, but is essentially Connie in the film, she begins to beg the narrator to go out there and rescue him. But when the narrator suggests that she get her man, wake her man up to go and check on him instead because he ain't doing shit, she just kind of goes silent. And then she decides to state that he's right and nothing is out there. And so those two go back to sleep while the salesman calls for help until he dies. Man, what the fuck? And if that isn't sad, if that's not sad enough for you, there is another moment later on when the narrator has accepted his fate of just being enslaved by these trucks. And so as he's taking a break and watching his other group members go pump gas and the girls sleep, he's looking at the girls sleep and he's thinking about how when she wakes up, he's gonna have to, you know, show her the road. She's gonna complain about having to do this, but she's gonna have to do this to survive. And she's gonna get blisters and she's gonna hate it, but they have to teach her how to pump gas so they can all take turns and take breaks because the machines don't give a fuck about a human body aching. Man, that is just sad. And he's thinking about like the health conditions and like, you know, the narrator is just already figuring out the future issues that they're going to have to run into being enslaved to these trucks. It's just way sadder. It's so much sadder. This story is just, it's so sad and dreadful with no resolution. And I think that is so effective for what the narrative is attempting to portray. Arguably, one could state that the resolution that Maximum Overdrive does have is more fitting to the tone of the rest of the film. And with that, I think I could agree with you. Maximum Overdrive does not begin as a serious film, and it sure as hell does not market itself as such. So if it had an ending more like Trucks, I agree, it just wouldn't fit the rest of the film. It still could have ended better. Plenty of cheesy horror movies are still able to manage a good and planned ending. And also this is my review and I liked how gloomy the short story is. I think maybe, because, you know, I'm talking about the story so much and the comparison of the two, I think it's important to note too that it would have been like impossible to adapt Trucks verbatim and it still be good. I love narratives that don't have a satisfying resolution or any resolution really. But, you know, as long as they're used appropriately and aren't just used as a narrative out. You know, like, if it makes sense to do it, I'm obsessed with it. I crave it. But when we're talking about visual media, like movies, audiences typically like for it to end with a conclusion or resolution, like a nice little bow tie to end things off. It's difficult to keep an audience engaged in a movie that will probably be dragging its feet for the entirety of it, for an ending that feels like no reward. I mean, does a film that's just a group of characters stuck in a diner with machines taking over and enslaving them, with just a few moments and small conflicts that might happen, and then the movie just ends with the characters in the exact same spot that they were? I mean, does that sound fun to mainstream audiences? Because this was a mainstream film. It was put out in theaters. For a film like that, like Trucks, what Trucks would be, for a film like that to have an audience, they're more than likely gonna have to exclusively focus on film festivals, you know? It's just film festival people that like that kind of shit. And listen, this is coming from somebody who loves vague, unfiction, no resolution endings. I eat that shit up all day. I eat it like it's breakfast. But as a fan of this narrative tool, I do think it's difficult for a film to achieve the same effect without the audience falling asleep. Vague and inconclusive narratives like Trucks kind of succeed better in the written form than they do a visual form. If you were to ask me why this is, I think I might just say, I mean, they're simply just two completely different mediums. You know what I mean? Like, each of them are capable of different things, and where one is strong, the other lacks, and vice versa. It's easier to keep a reader engaged within pages and pages of perspective storytelling, whether it's first person or omniscient, and that's able to create more of a, you know, complex idea than really what can be communicated within a movie that's only an hour and a half to like maximum 3 hours long. But films do thrive in making the visual aspect of the story a lot clearer, such as the actions, the settings or places, the way the characters look, dress, behave. and so on. You know, like for example, when I read action, I feel like action is really difficult to read, and I don't know if that's just a me thing, but if I'm being completely transparent, I feel like action is more fun to watch and easier to watch than it is to read in like a story or a book. There are also a lot of times where if you consume both, it just overall adds to the whole experience of interacting with this form of media. So I'm digressing just a little bit, but as an example, when I started getting into Lord of the Rings, there was a lot that the film does not cover or explain, which made it extremely confusing for me to watch. Like it was so hard for me to get into Lord of the Rings by just watching the movies, because I'm like, I don't know who the fuck these people are. I don't know how they know each other. There's so much. How, I don't know. But when I decided to start reading the books, it was like, wow. It's just, the books so clearly explain to you what's happening. And it does it in a way that I think is impossible for film to do. So like when I started reading Lord of the Rings, I started to, you know, get an understanding of who this character was, who that character is, their relations, their history, the history of the land. But like I said, in books, sometimes action can be really difficult to read or pay attention to. I don't know, it's hard for me to read action, you know? But that's where the movies come in. The fucking third movie just being just a battle. Just a 3-hour casual battle. Anyway, does that make sense? Like, movies have a time it's not even just that they have a time constraint, but they're also limited on what they can show you. And books can go way more into like depth and detail because you can go into like thoughts, right? And so because movies can't cover everything, that's where the written form comes in. But movies do a great job of, you know, bringing a written story to life, basically. So just because I've talked about the ending so much, if you asked me how I would adapt like Trucks to end in a movie form, I would say like maybe the group escapes and they either find another group or they find like a civilization of other survivors, and that's how it ends. I don't know. That's like, I think that would be the attempt that I would put towards making the Trucks ending adapted for a film to satisfy a visual audience. But we're talking about Maximum Overdrive mostly, and Maximum Overdrive I don't think is Trucks. And so I'm not really sure how I would have changed the ending of that. It just felt awkward to me, you know? Like, I guess it was fine, but it just feels like it could have been more out there. It could have been more impressive to match the comedic tone that was at the start of the movie. Bring it full circle, man. If the middle of it is gonna be serious, can the conclusion at least be as energetic and campy as the beginning of the fucking thing? Come on. And then this is just like a final little note that I wanted to include, but I watched Maximum Overdrive first, and then I read Trucks, and then I watched the movie again. So on my first viewing, I was like angrily confused why the cast was suddenly filling up the semi-trucks. And listen, I understood, okay? I understood that they're being threatened with a gun on wheels. I get it. But it just felt so weird and out of place to me. Like, I was laughing because I was just like, what has this movie turned into and why are we doing this, man? But I feel like I didn't have a very clear understanding of why we're doing this until after I read Trucks. Trucks it covers the horror of being enslaved by machines who don't care how much a human body aches. And, you know, because that part of the story is coming from the narrator's head, his perspective, we don't get that understanding in the film as it's happening. And so it has less meaning in the film because it's not covered. I do know that Bill attempts to convey this feeling in like one single shitty sentence.
He's all done, man.
I don't understand.
What's that, Billy?
I just get tired. How man gets tired.
That really doesn't convey the meaning that the story does. Just again, the story has more room to be able to go over these complex themes and topics, which the film just doesn't have the time for. Or it's just, you know, some of these things, it is just really difficult to show it in a visual format. I think this film starts incredibly strong, only for it to gradually lose its energy and never gain it back. I do think it's a fun movie. The beginning of it is just a lot of fun, and it really does hook the viewer. But after you get hooked, the narrative doesn't go anywhere, man. It becomes very slow, and like I said, the finale is just so awkward to me. It feels a little thrown together, and it just... But again, it might feel thrown together because it was a short story that had no resolution. So now, hey, guess what, Jackwad? You gotta come up with a resolution for the movie. And, you know, that could be part of the reason why it feels that way. Personally, I think I like the short story better because it's just it's a snippet, you know? It's a snippet of something larger that's happening. But it's also one of those concepts that serves better as a short story than a narrative. Not every narrative needs to be a novel. In fact, some stories just succeed much better if they're a short story or a snapshot of something that's, you know, perhaps a lot larger going on that the audience will never learn about. That's fine. Stories are allowed to do that. And there are a lot of times, again, where they succeed very well. The concept of trucks is terrifying and holds a lot of dread, but after the trucks enslave humanity, I mean, where does the story go? Especially in the short story when it's not explained how or why the trucks are sentient. You know, this is what I mean by not every story needs to have a full-fledged narrative behind it. Things can just be a piece of something larger. And sometimes it works better. The issue is just that it's really difficult to convey. It's difficult to convey that in a visual way while still remaining interesting or maintaining the audience's attention. So I've been having, the whole time that I've been like rewatching and writing this, I've been having a really difficult time deciding whether I would list this as a B or a C tier. Because, like, here, I want to say B, because the first half I did have fun, and it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. But would I hold it as high as other B movies that I have? I don't know. And here's the thing, I don't think I'm ever gonna rewatch this movie. It just, a lot of people are gonna be upset because it has a lot of people love this movie. My final score for Maximum Overdrive is C tier. Again, very strong beginning, which then later dies. I loved the first half of the film and how outrageous it was. And the first half would be the only reason I would ever rewatch this. I would probably just stop watching after the salesman gets hit, because that seems to be the turning point that the story dies for me. And listen, I don't care if you love this movie. I get why people love this movie. It is really fun. It is really campy. And although I wasn't crazy about it, would shit myself if I got to see the Green Goblin truck in person. Are you kidding me? When I watch it, it makes complete sense why it has a cult following and why people adore this movie. I completely get it. I get it, you know. But listen, I am a movie girl. I'm a movie girl. I fucking love movies. And I think I've made my point across very well that I was excited. I thought I was going to be obsessed with this movie. I thought, oh no, I'm going to have like 2 A tiers in a row. I don't know, man. It just pains me that I have so many criticisms about it because I was ready to fall in love with this movie. I was so hyped when I pressed play. I love movies, man. I love movies. And so it upsets me a little bit that I'm not crazy about Maximum Overdrive. I'm not crazy about. Thank you guys so much for being here with me this week on my review of Maximum Overdrive, written and directed by Stephen King. If you stayed until the end, put a semi-truck emoji in the comments. I did check. There are two semi-truck emojis to choose from. Take your pick. One's green, one's orange. If you stayed all the way until the end, put that semi-truck in the comments. And if you've seen Maximum Overdrive, tell me your opinion of the movie. I'm curious, you know, especially because this has such a cult following. I'm interested to see what other people have to say about it. If you liked this video, please give it a like. If you dislike it, if you hate my opinion of Maximum Overdrive, that's okay. If you liked this video, if you liked this review so much that you want to see me do more, consider hitting the subscribe button and also the bell notification so you can be notified when I make a new upload. And shit, do you got some friends that also love bad, cheesy movies? Consider sharing this review with them and, like, you know, have a movie night this Saturday with your friends. You guys should watch Maximum Overdrive together. Again, the link in the description is for how to watch on Pluto TV. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate you giving me your time to watch this. Momo says she wants to be in the outro too, so if you want to see more of Momo says to subscribe also. Subscribe and like. Anyway, I will be seeing you guys next week for the next movie review. I appreciate anyone who takes the time to really sit here and watch these because I put a lot of fucking work into them. So be safe out there. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much and good night.